while he worked for the Walsh family. Here he slept, and here he kept his books, and here he studied. The idea came to him that if the Greek New Testament had such a profound effect upon the scholastic world, what would an English Bible do for plowboys? At this very spot, he decided he was going to translate the Greek New Testament into English. He worked on the project while he was here for 6 months. Then he realized that it was jeopardizing the Walsh family's life. So he left here and he went to London. He tried to get the Bishop of London, Bishop Tunstall, to give him official permission for what he was doing, but Tunstall would not do it. So he self-imposed an exile on himself, went over to the continent, met with Martin Luther, and found a great friend in Luther. He finished the work of translation and then started on the problem of having it printed. That was a very difficult problem for him to solve, because the English had decided they were going to do everything to make it impossible. They put a price on his head. And so he lived in poverty, crisscrossed his paths. He was on one occasion, they were coming in the front door to arrest him in the print shop when he gathered whatever documents he could and went out into the night in the back door. And he lived like that. But one holy passion gave him and made him indefatigable in his energy. He wanted to finish this work. And eventually in December of 1525, his work was completed. And a new phase began. How is he going to get these Bibles smuggled into England? Would you believe that that all has something to do with this? A bag of flour? I'm standing now where the port of London was in the days of William Tyndale. It was run by German authorities, and if you remember, Tyndale spent 6 months here before his self-exile over to the continent, and during that time he didn't waste it. He became acquainted with these authorities. He got to know them so well that they would help him when he wanted to get his Bibles into this country. Or the flour. Well, that came into this port as well. It was in sacks. And in the middle of those sacks of flour, Tyndale's Bibles. They came in such a large number, they spread all over the country and took England like a shock wave. It's a little bit ironic, but right across the street, he stands in the form of a statue, and he's looking down right on the place where his Bibles were smuggled into this country. Thousands and thousands of his Bibles came into England. But why, today, is there only one completed copy of that 1526 New Testament? A man named Tunstall was the Bishop of London at the time of William Tyndale, and he was Tyndale's bitter enemy. He did everything that he could to frustrate what Tyndale had in mind, and whenever he could find one of the Bibles, he would bring it here to St. Paul's Cathedral and ceremoniously put it on fire. It was here that he fervently preached against what William Tyndale was trying to accomplish. He was so frustrated that he decided he would go to the extreme measure of getting all the money available he could get, go over to the continent and buy all the Bibles to be bought and bring them all here, burn them, and that would be the end of it all. He had a man by the name of Augustine Pakistan, and Pakistan was a merchantman that did a lot of trade over there. He asked Pakistan if he would arrange to buy all the Bibles that he could find. Pakistan agreed. But what Tunstall didn't know, Pakistan was a friend of William Tyndale's. When he bought the Bibles, he paid 4 times the price of a Bible in order to buy one, allowing Tyndale to reprint 3 in place of it. And so it turned out to be that the very man who was trying to destroy the project was actually paying the cost of it. However, in 1535, Tyndale was captured. It was a friend that betrayed him. He spent 1.5 years in the castle at Vulvord working on the translation of the Old Testament. That was his life's passion, and he couldn't get away from it. And then in October of 1536, they took him out to die. He was tied to a stake where the timber was around to ignite and burn him to death. But there's another part to that. They put 2 holes in the stake. They threaded a piece of wire through those holes that went around the throat of Tyndale, and they determined that he would die by strangulation as well as by burning at the same time. The last chapter in a great man's life. And the last words that he spoke just before, when the flames were coming up and before they pulled the wire: "Lord, open the eyes of the King of England." We've been looking at the struggles we've gone through in order to get an English Bible. We've gone back to the days of John Wycliffe. We've gone through the days of William Tyndale. And remember William Tyndale's last and closing prayer, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes"? That was very quickly answered by the Lord, because a man working with him by the name of John Rogers picked up his pen, finished the translation of Hebrew in the Old Testament, and then took the documents and of all places sent them to England. And when the printer received them, he was so impressed by them, he sent them to the Archbishop of Canterbury in an effort to get approval to have them openly published. The Archbishop of Canterbury attempted to get the King of England to approve it, and he accomplished it. And it's really a miracle, because if you look at the end of the book of Malachi, William Tyndale's initials are as big as they can be. A man that was persecuted by the King of England and now approved for publication with his initials on it. However, there were footnotes, and they were very strong. In fact, they were so strong that the Secretary of State was afraid the king would withdraw approval unless they were changed. So another Bible had to be brought about. Miles Coverdale had taken and edited that edition, had softened the footnotes, and what's called the Great Bible was then published. The Great Bible was required by the King of England to be posted in every parish church, available for anybody to read whenever they wanted to read it, a reader provided if they could not read. And of all things, on the title page was the name Cuthbert, a bishop. Who is he? He's none other than Bishop Tunstall, the man that had burned Tyndale's Bibles. Here's Tyndale's Bible in a new form, and his name is on the title page approving its publication. All of that happened with this great Bible in 1539, only 3 years after William Tyndale had burned to death at the stake. This brings us down to the King James Version of the Bible and its translation. Back in 1604, when it was agreed upon by King James, he appointed Richard Bancroft, who was then the Bishop of London and later became the Archbishop of Canterbury. He first selected 3 men to help him. Those 3 men were taken as academicians, first from the city of Oxford, then from here at Westminster, and then finally from Cambridge University. Their job then was to put